Why?
I'd like to call the meeting to order.
This meeting is being held in accordance with the schedule of meetings adopted at the organizational meeting held January 6, 2021. Adequate notice of this regular meeting of the Kenilworth Board of Education has been provided to the Home News Tribune, the Star Ledger, the local source, on January 8, 2021. A copy has been filed with the Kenilworth Borough Clerk, posted in the board office, the Kenilworth Borough Hall, Brearley and Harding Schools, as is provided by the Open Public Meetings Act.
Thank you. Please rise and join us in the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Ganello, can we please have roll call?
Minor? Here. Braun?
Here.
David? Drogan? Haberther? Here. Jankowicz? Here. Ladati? Here. Panici?
Here.
Zimmerman? Here. We have quorum.
Thank you. Receiving of the minutes, can we please have a motion to accept the minutes from July 12, 2020? Seconded? We have second, please?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Haberther, seconded by Mrs. Braun. All those in favor of receiving the minutes from July 12, 2021, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Reading and acceptance of the monthly correspondence. Mr. Ganello, do we have any correspondence this evening?
Yes, we have one public statement. We have a thank you note from Ava Figadoro to myself regarding the Horace Hayman Memorial Scholarship for Business.
Thank you. Can we please have a motion to accept the monthly correspondence? Please have a second. Motion made by Mr. Haberther, seconded by Mr. Jankowicz. All those in favor of accepting public correspondence, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Prior to Mr. Arlington's report, I'd like to read a statement. As I'm sure many of you are aware, just as we thought, things were normalizing for the upcoming year. The Delta variant has emerged, and we've been found by the CDC to be more infectious and leading to increased transmittability when compared to other variants, even in vaccinated individuals. Although we recently had informed you that wearing a mask would be optional for our students and staff when school reopened in September, that will no longer be the protocol we follow at this time. Fast-moving events regarding the increased transmittability of the Delta variant resulted in updated guidance from the CDC, which in turn prompted Governor Murphy to issue the Executive Order 251 on August 6 pursuant to EO 251. All districts must maintain a policy that requires all students, staff, and visitors, regardless of vaccination status, to wear masks in the indoor portions of all school premises, with certain exceptions that are set forth in the order. The EO makes clear that mandatory masking is one of the layered prevention strategies that will allow us to return to full-time in-person learning this fall. Executive orders are not voluntary. They have the force of law, which means that all of us, board members, administrators, teachers, and parents, are all under a legal duty to comply. Any person who violates this executive order will be committing an unlawful act and will be subject to a prison term of up to 6 months, a fine of up to $1,000, or both, in the discretion of the court. Mr. Arlington, when you're ready for your report and presentation.
Sure, thank you. Okay, good evening, everyone. Mr. Davies and Ms. Carrera and I are going to present and walk everyone through the presentation that was sent out on Thursday, August 5th, and highlight some of the key details of our reopening plan. This is the first iteration of that draft because, as you know, and as you just heard, things move and change quickly, so we anticipate providing updated guidance in the upcoming weeks, probably through the auspices of the principals and their teams. We imagine, though, parents wanting to know some of the information we sent out last Thursday, and as it's kind of the midpoint of the summer, we wanted to provide that school community courtesy to let you know where we stood in our planning, which really has been ongoing since April, really. So these were the principles that we followed last year and that we anchored to in order to return us to school and have a really successful school year last year, with the majority of our time in person beginning in September. And these guiding principles we felt still kind of stuck, so we are staying with them. We believe in health and wellness. We really want to ensure that our reopening plans prioritize academic programming. We prioritize social and emotional needs, access to technology, and then we realize the whole child experience is more than just academics. And so our reopening plan takes that in mind. The goal was the same last year as it was this year, and that is to responsibly return all members of our school community to our buildings in a healthy and safe way. What we're really proud of regarding this presentation is that it not only highlights the aspects of health and wellness, but it really hopefully gives you a sort of bird's eye view into what we're planning next year in each of the critical areas of school. So you'll see some of our planning and intention for curriculum and instruction, student personnel services, technology, buildings and grounds, in different areas that are the pillars of the teaching and learning system. So this year, we're relying on the Road Forward guidance as proffered by the DOE. And so while some of the main categories and tenets remain the same, it's a different type of guidance. Last year's guidance, the Road Back, was 104 sort of mammoth-paged document. This is much slimmer with a lot more flexibility built in. There are some requirements there, including masks on buses, the recommendation for physical distancing, strategies to improve airflow, and then of course some suggestions for cleaning protocols. I wanted to highlight this key language that was in the Road Forward. I didn't include this in the update that I sent on Thursday, but I'm including it here because as I kind of reflected on that update, I thought maybe this was critical and I should have included it, so I am here. So whereas last year there were suggested and mandated intervention strategies that we needed to employ, this year's guidance looks and sounds a little different. So all of the framing language is around consider implementing, right? And there's this idea also present in the very beginning of the document that says the absence of one or more of the strategies outlined in this document does not preclude the reopening of a school facility for full day in-person operation with all enrolled students and staff presence. We're going to take as many layered approaches as possible to continue to keep our school community safe, but recognize that the Road Forward does allow for flexibility with certain aspects of our reopening plans. So I had sent this out last Thursday and tied it around this idea that mask guidance is changing. Of course, then Friday, the governor made his announcement, which really spotlights we learn of information that happens at the governor's level just when you do. We don't get advance notice of that. And so we try to be responsive and nimble to comply. So because of that change in approach and that mandate, we'll share our mask policy for the school year as soon as possible. We do want to point out, and we did leave copies of it on the table, that the board did support a mask optional policy for school community members. And that letter was linked in the guidance. Of course, that's somewhat null and void with the new mandate. Last year, we conducted at-home health checks. In conferring with my colleagues across the county, we are going to do a sort of one-time daily attestation via the Genesis checkoffs that you comply with at the start of the year that just says you're aware of the signs and symptoms and that if your child is sick, they'll stay home. The daily health checks prove overly efficacious, so we thought just a one-time attestation makes more sense. The symptom checklist has not changed, but we included it in there to sort of jog everyone's memory. We combed through the Road Forward guidance with working with our department health officer to formulate quarantine policies. And the Road Forward has a kind of tiered, differentiated approach to quarantine policies based on community transmission levels. So as you recall, each Thursday, the state presents out a Cali report, a COVID activity level index, and our region, East region, is part of New Jersey, and based on cases in our region, we're given a color, red, orange, yellow, or green. And based on those colors, the quarantine policy for unvaccinated people changes. So we'll be looking to drill down into that guidance and that policy and make it more user-friendly in the upcoming weeks and send that with the next iteration of our reopening plans. We're also looking at our home instruction policy. We're thinking that home instruction generally for COVID or non-COVID related matters would be virtual this year. That just makes more sense than having teachers go into homes. That seems not the wisest idea given the current health environment. So we're looking to make sure that our home instruction policy has a bend and a concern for COVID-related cases. We're actively working on that policy, and we'll be sharing that out in the upcoming weeks as well. Our medical team also met recently and revised a document that you're hopefully familiar with. It has key terms and some scenarios, and that's really the guiding document we use to make medically informed decisions throughout the year. As I mentioned earlier, we wanted to make sure that the guidance we were sending had a sort of holistic eye on all the good work we're planning for the school year. So we realize mental health and social emotional learning is a top priority. So we'll continue to use screening tools for kids across the grade levels. We'll continue parent trainings and sort of teach into all of these bullets here that you can review either, you can review based on the guidance previously sent. We'll also be transitioning our mental health partnership from Care Plus to the Rutgers Behavioral Health Care. They'll provide a sort of triangulated way of supporting homes, schools, and for those students who see clinicians, work with clinicians as well. We'll continue to monitor student support via screenings and provide individual counseling for those students who may need it. Individual education plans are being revised as needed, and so if you have a concern about an IEP or the way that that's being implemented, I suggest reaching out to the case manager so we can have those conversations as early as possible, and so that plans are in place for students come September. We've had some really strong, really great parent training last year. It was really well attended, so we're planning to continue that thread of support through the auspices of the Special Ed Parent Advisory Group. Lots of those trainings were via Zoom. I think that was more convenient for people, so we'll continue with that trend as well. Our cleaning protocols really proved effective. We received a lot of positive feedback about them, and so we'll be continuing with those as well. You may recall that last year we did an individual sort of fact sheet on each area of our reopening plan, and while we didn't do that this year, a lot of the information that's in those fact sheets holds water, including the cleaning protocols. We're actively working on indoor or HVAC updates. Some of the work that you see here and that you saw when you reviewed this presentation spotlight the work that's happening now and the work that will happen over the course of the next several months as a result of our energy savings improvement plan. We also have a pretty finely tuned HVAC maintenance protocol and an SOP. We continue to monitor that as another layer of intervention. A lot of the questions we received over the summer in advance of our planning and that really drove our planning was about what classroom instruction looks like at the classroom level. So Mr. Davies and Mrs. Carrera will talk a little bit about our planning regarding social distancing, lunches, and what instruction may look like as a result of our return to school.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. So we are, at David Brearley, we are working to find several different places for the students to spread out during the lunch periods. Specifically, we have obviously this cafeteria space, but we're going to be dividing the students into other spaces as well, utilizing the back gym where we've ordered a number of lunch tables because we want to, as best as possible, maintain that 3-foot distance between students during the lunchtime. So we have the cafeteria, the back gym, as well as the auditorium. So we have 3 large spaces to spread our students out. With that said, what we were doing back in the spring was we were working to balance our schedule as best as possible so that students' lunches can be balanced. That's not always the easiest thing to do with our schedule because our science labs pour into the lunch periods, but we did our best to make sure our student population is evenly divided. Of course, we have two middle school lunches and 2 high school lunches. Those are divided as evenly as possible, and those students will be divided again into those 3 spaces: the cafeteria, the back gym, and the auditorium. We're working to hire additional lunch aides to support student supervision during that time, and we also are going to be opening up the open campus privileges to juniors. Currently at David Brearley, seniors have an open campus privilege. We're going to be extending that to our juniors as well to relieve the pressure on the building so that we can keep our students as distanced as possible. So that's lunch at Brearley.
So lunch at Harding, we have also been able to create a schedule that maintains our social distancing. So we have lengthened our lunch block time and have created a schedule that allows 1 grade level at a time to be in the cafeteria. So there will be 2 grade levels at that lunch period. One will be in the cafeteria eating lunch, the other will be at recess. And we too have hired additional lunch aides to provide support and supervision of our students.
And also just one other thing regarding instruction, we are working to maintain distancing as best as possible, but one of the things that we think is really important is that students can be working in small groups and can be utilizing science equipment, math manipulatives. So instructionally, we are moving forward with those aspects of reopening happening in the fall.
Thanks, Jeremy. If I could just add to that, with social distancing, so we're aiming to maintain 3 feet of distance students in classrooms, but you may or may not be aware that the CDC, now we need to see if the New Jersey Department of Health adopts this, but the CDC just said while the definition of a close contact is within 6 feet for K-12 schools for students wearing a mask, right? If you come in contact with a person with COVID and you're properly wearing your mask between 3 and 6 feet, you're not considered a close contact. So we're still working through that with our health officer. And again, we, not only with executive orders, but with CDC guidance, not that we don't follow that, but the New Jersey Department of Health then takes the CDC guidance and either adopts it or not. School districts are then compelled to follow with learning through the use of hands-on materials, right? So we're really excited to have like 3D printers next year and reopen our maker spaces. And while we still have to figure out cleaning protocols, those are experiences we're committed to providing our students. Hand washing, I'm not sure there's much to be said here, except that we'll ensure adequate supplies of hand sanitizer throughout the buildings. So we did a lot of patchwork last year with personnel in order to accommodate students who elected to learn virtually. And since there's no virtual learning option in play next year, we'll be returning to a standard model of staffing. So that not only goes for our intervention services, but for our specials, art, music, makerspace as well. In the fall, students in grades 3 through 11 will participate in the Start Strong assessments. The state received a federal waiver allowing us not to administer the New Jersey Student Learning Assessments. Instead, we need to administer these Start Strong assessments, which should be short, quick, and even quicker turnaround time to measure growth and loss, and we're planning for that in September and October. Some of the other things we're excited about is expanding and leveraging Study Island, introducing Math 180 for struggling middle school math students, extending the success we've had at K2 with Orton Gillingham to grade 3, and then leveraging some of these tools that we really relied on last year and continuing to make them cornerstones of our teaching and learning. Is that?
So regarding physical education within the school day, we are looking to return to last year protocols. We anticipate utilizing locker rooms, and we're right now in discussion about what that looks like in terms of students changing, but we do anticipate a return to physical education the way it's always been. The same goes for athletics. So, of course, students will have to be masked when in the building, but in terms of sports, we're returning to pretty standard sports protocols.
We were already engaged in deploying a one-to-one Chromebook rollout prior to the pandemic. The pandemic just reinforced our efforts and was sort of a pat on the back for us. We're committed to ensuring that each student is we were last year, a Chromebook across grades pre-K through 12. Some upgrades to our infrastructure was made over the summer. And then last year we began like a sort of wide tech steering committee, and some of the recommendations and work that came out of that committee will be in play for September. So we're beginning to replace the district's oldest smart boards with interactive TVs. We'll be installing sound amplification systems in pre-K2 classrooms, and looking to continue to gather stakeholder input to drive tech decisions, and try to create like classroom technology models so there's parity across classrooms in terms of the tech that both teachers and students have access to. We're also really excited about some of the good work we're planning across the 3 buildings as well.
So at Harding, like any family that's been apart for a long time, we are looking forward to celebrating our entire staff and student body returning full-time in person. Some of the activities that we'll be doing will include community building and our continued awareness of the social and emotional needs of our staff and students. As we reestablish our new norm of what school will look like, we will be working on refining our vision and mission, and some of that work will be thinking about what our why is and remembering our purpose in school and what we want school to look like for our students moving forward. We'll continue our work on streamlining our multi-tiered systems of support to make sure that our core instruction and our interventions are based in data and best practice, and that they're meeting the needs of all of our students. We look forward to working with our new intervention coordinator who comes to us with experience in this area and will help to steer some of this work. We will be including students in our focus groups this year and really taking a look at the experience a student has in school, and some of those focus groups will look at culture and climate and SEL and the expectations that a student has of what school should look like. And finally, we're excited to reopen our maker space and allow students the opportunities to develop their creativity and innovation skills and engage in some inquiry-based learning experiences.
Things are exciting at Brearley Middle School. Hopefully, our middle school students are using August to work on their summer reading. Thanks to Ms. Wurzel and the middle school ELA team, we have a great middle school reading initiative. The students selecting one book out of a selection of 6 titles. Ms. Wurzel is even, I believe, just about ready to book one of the authors to come into our school. So we're having a reading event in early September based on the students' summer reading. So that's very exciting, and the students will be able to interact with one of the authors of the books that they're reading. So that's happening as we speak. We've also been working on the creative design course, and we're hiring a new technology teacher as well to work in the upcoming technology lab. We have a 3D printer coming. So those are all exciting innovations to our middle school programming. Also, the language arts team today and tomorrow are working on their book club professional learning experience. So they're working with a consultant on reading strategies and utilizing book clubs in the ELA classroom at the middle school level. So it's very exciting stuff. We're bringing back the middle school talent show, so that'll be a fun event, most likely in March. And then, of course, we're building off of the success of our middle school summer enrichment program, which was highly successful over the month of July. And we had over 65 students on a regular basis attending our middle school summer enrichment. They were learning skills, of course, but they were also reconnecting with their teachers, reconnecting with school in a way that the pandemic really forced us out of, and we're bringing that back. So we look forward at Brearley Middle School to additional social and emotional programming via assemblies and other initiatives at the middle school level. At the high school, I'm excited for our Camp College, which is later this week on Wednesday and Thursday. So hopefully our rising seniors are going to take advantage of that. We already have close to 50 students signed up for Camp College, in which we are providing students opportunities to work on their resume, to work on their college applications, to work on their interview skills and their college essays, all in a workshop model. So when the students complete these 2 days of Camp College, they'll come out with a fully completed college application ready to roll before we even hit September. So that's exciting. We've also revamped our English 4 curriculum, and we're starting off the fall with a crime and law and literature course. This is a course that the students chose out of a selection of 6 options. So we're allowing students to choose the courses that they take as seniors, and I think that's really exciting to change the nature of the text that they read. Also, our world language teachers spent several days this summer working on actful proficiencies, which is taking a different approach to world language and focused on can-do statements. So the students are utilizing the speaking, the listening, the writing, and the reading skills, and they're now focused on what can I do with this. Rather than memorizing vocabulary lists, which is a more traditional approach, we're working on those proficiencies. Finally, we're going to be planning a David Brearley Career Fair in March, and then we're also pursuing the No Place for Hate designation, which signifies that we are a community of learners who cares for each other. So I'm excited for all those things at the high school level as well.
A lot of those projects and initiatives and efforts may be familiar to you. Some are new, but some are just an expansion of and a deepening of and a problematizing of some of the work that we did last year. So if you haven't checked out this sort of amazing that showcases all of the great work going on in our district, I encourage you to look at it or even revisit it. You know, even in the dark, I found an update I had written like in March of 2020, and I think I started with something like, even in the darkest of times, there's something to celebrate. And so as we reflect on our learning as professionals and as a district, surely there are some takeaways from a most unusual year that we can carry over and transfer into our new year to make our practice richer and to make our school district better. And this is certainly not a comprehensive list, but these are some of the sort of silver lining learnings that came to mind that I hope we can leverage and expand on next year and into future years. We realize that there are lots of questions. We tried to make our reopening presentation as thoughtful and as comprehensive as possible, but of course we know there are probably areas you're wondering about that aren't included here. And so if you go back into the presentation and click on that communications resource chart, we just ask that you direct your question to the best person, the person most able to answer it, so you get the best, quickest response possible. So check out that chart if you haven't already. Most questions we're getting are around health and wellness, and the best people to address those questions are our principals or our medical team. And so their important contact information is not only on the website, but it's in that presentation too. So perhaps a bookmark it for future reference. Again, despite the unknown, we're really proud of our planning efforts and all the great work that we anticipate engaging in over the next 10 months. I appreciate Mr. Ben, who couldn't be here tonight, Ms. Carrera, Ms. Wichall, Mr. Davies, along with Ms. Kukalo and Mr. Luciani, as well as the entire leadership team, who really came together to make sure that the education and the programming we're offering next year is as close to normal but as innovative and progressive as possible. So thank you guys. Madam President, I'm happy to take questions from the board. And then Jeremy, Carol, and I can also take questions from the public at the appropriate time also.
Anyone have questions for Mr. Arlington on his presentation or one of the administrators?
Sure.
If you don't live up or live by the governor's mandates, is there any, can you just find out if there's any repercussions on that, like funding reductions or anything like that?
Yeah,
for
so,
maybe next meeting?
yeah, so there is. We did look into that today through the auspices of our legal counsel. There's a couple things, right? I signed a contract that says I'm going to follow the laws of New Jersey. So selfishly, if I don't follow them, my certification is at risk, as are the teachers if they don't follow them. Also, board members take an oath, right? An oath of ethics that you need to uphold the law. And so while the mandate is not a law, it has the effect of the law. So in addition to having those type of issues attached to them, we have confirmed that that also would put our school funding and state funding in jeopardy as well. Not to mention, if we don't follow that rule and someone does get sick, you're liable. The district is liable. Yeah.
I had just a couple comments.
Sure.
One, we talked about the mandate of the executive order and the idea that you want to go with the, as best as possible, the 3-foot social distancing, which was utilized last year. Now, is that something that's even feasible if you're talking about a full-size class? Because I'm just thinking about even my own classroom. With my normal-sized class, there is no way to fit every person in that room, in my room, with a 3-foot distance, because when we set it up for SAT testing, we can barely fit the 15 desks in at the 3 feet, much less the 28 or so that I normally get in a group. We had that hybrid thing going where some kids were here, some kids were at home, so the distancing wasn't an issue then. Are we going to be able to accommodate that with everybody here?
Yes. So we've done walkthroughs. I would defer to Mr. Ganella a bit on that too. I would also keep in mind that in addition to having the cohort model last year, bundled together with the fact, to your point, that some kids did stay home, we were aiming to keep a 6-foot distance. A 3-foot distance we believe is feasible.
Okay. And then we talked about the open lunch being one of the things that they're looking at Brearley to help with the numbers in terms of people in contact for lunch period. How long is the lunch period at Brearley going to be these days? I mean, when my daughter went here, it wasn't that long, so.
So students have, in the building, they have 25 minutes to eat and 25 minutes to not eat. But so they have basically a 50-minute period to eat
For
lunch. So
lunch
if you have
now?
open campus privilege, you have that entire 50 minutes for lunch.
So in an open lunch, the students would be expected to go somewhere, eat, and be returned within a 50-minute
Within 50
time?
minutes, yes.
Okay. And then at Harding, it was mentioned the way that they were going to deal with lunch for Harding was to extend that lunch block. What's the time frame that we're talking about when we're talking? Because I know when we extended it at my high school, you know, some of those kids had a pretty early lunch period.
Breakfast. Yeah, so our extended lunch block will be 10:15 to 1:10.
10:15 would be the first lunch group.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, any questions?
That covers me for now.
No? Think you're good?
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Just a few more things, Dr. Panici. In the packet, you'll see the pro forma enrollment report and the HIB report. Those are zeroed out. We've had no reported incidents of HIB in the month of July. You'll be voting on the June HIB report later in the meeting, and those were zeros too. The enrollment report also, it should be noted, is a projection for next year, and it looks a little different because I collapsed the, there was a bifurcation, right, between the virtual and the in-person, and now we're all in person. So if it looks a little different, that's why. Good?
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Arlington regarding the HIB report?
Just finally, I'd like to congratulate and wish well two members of our school community. One is Val Meshi. Val goes by Bonnie, has served our district for 8 years, and Marcy Martinez has served our district for 12 years. So I wish them well and all the best. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Okay, next we will have report of committees, review of resolutions, and board discussion. First up is finance and facilities and negotiations. Mr. Ladati.
Sure, thank you. First, I'll handle the finance and facilities part first. My report, preparations for the annual audit continue with the order schedules to be in the district the week of August 30th. Classrooms are rapidly being cleaned and will be ready for the start of the new year. For the facility projects, they're all proceeding nicely. The solar project is on schedule. The energy savings lighting phase is wrapping up. The Harding School masonry is on schedule. There was a section of the facade that was in bad shape, which we will need to do further repairs on now. Regarding the Harding gym project, the floors have been refinished, the mats have been installed, and the bleachers will be in later this fall. The old relocatable classrooms, which we called Kenilworth the temporary classrooms, I think they were there since 1972, 73, Vince? You know, they were here before I went to high school. So those classrooms will be demolished this week. So at least we got like 50 years out of those supposedly temporary classrooms. So I guess that was a good, cost-effective temporary classroom. Our committee will meet on 8/23 to restart the referendum discussions. The architects will be at the meeting reviewing the plans. The full board will be part of the discussion on August 30th, where the architects will do another presentation presentation, and so will the administration. For resolutions for the finance committee, Superintendent Arlington's report highlighted a few of the facility and resolutions. I did review the financial reports, and they all are in order. Just call your attention to two: the school resource officer, which is contract, which is in pages 16 to 23 in your packet. We're going to agree to approve that tonight, or vote to approve that tonight. The increase is about $1,000 a year. We work off basically the 2% cap, and also the police officers have a 2% contract raise. So that $1,000 is based off of that contract that the police officers accepted and our 2% cap. Number 10 is just the comprehensive equity plan. Basically, that is confirmation that we will achieve, maintain the laws, codes, and regulations of the state. For negotiations, obviously, I can't get into a lot of the detail, but we continue to work towards resolution of the contract with the teachers union while keeping in mind the burden to the taxpayers. With that in mind, we have several efforts to get back to the table have finally come to be fruitful. We have a meeting this Thursday in which we hope to get closer to an agreement. That's my report.
Anyone have questions for Mr. Ladati? No? Thank you, Mr. Ladati. Next up, personnel management, Mr. Haberther.
Good evening, everybody. 17 resolutions tonight. 11 and 12 are the aforementioned resignations that Mr. Arlington mentioned. Resolutions 13 through 20 are approval to hire teachers in both Burley and Harding. Resolution 21 is the approval to hire lunchroom aides and paraprofessional aides. 22 is the approval to hire a lead mechanic. 23 are co-curricular stipend positions, the approval of. 24 is the approval of athletic stipend positions. Resolution 25 are 2 stipends for the upcoming 2021 school year. I'm sorry. 7 stuff. Resolution 26 is the approval of professional development presenters. And 27 is the approval of the child studies unit. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Haberther. Next up, curriculum and instruction, Mr. Jankowicz.
Before I get into the resolutions, just wanted to just let everyone know that the curriculum committee met prior to today's board meeting. Some of the topics discussed were adjustments to new teacher orientation. There was approximately 15 new teachers, so there's some really good things related to the new orientation program. We also discussed a program for development of the leadership team. We touched upon using data results from the AP exams to I guess, improve the AP results of the instruction for AP classes. We discussed intervention, the role of the interventions coordinator to help support teachers and students, and a little bit about mentoring program for teachers, as well as some of the professional development plans that were in place, such as like the Google certification courses. So for curriculum and instruction, Resolution 28 is the adoption of curriculum in the first grade. Resolution 29 is curriculum writing adoption for I guess a student or a teacher staff program. Resolution 30 is updates to the student parent handbook. 31 is the district mentoring plan. 32 is the professional development plan. 33 is the approval of the use of evaluation software management system. And 34 is the approval of the June HIP report. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Jankowicz. Next up, policy, Mrs. Braun. Policy review, Mrs. Braun.
Okay, we have several resolutions tonight. Resolution 35 is the first reading of 5460.02 for the Bridge Year Pilot Program. It is mandatory, and it was the Department of Ed who implemented the program for students in the class of 21 and 22 to provide them opportunities to offset interruptions to their extracurricular activities due to COVID. Resolution 36 has several policies and regulations which need revisions to adopt. Policy Regulation 3142 and 4146 are amending some minor language to bring it consistent with administrative code. Policy Regulation 3221, 3222, 3223, and 3224 are an update to state rubrics that have to be now due 8-1 in lieu of 6-1. That's mandatory. And then Resolution 37 is an abolishment to Policy 1649, which was the Federal Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which had been mandatory, but now it has expired as of 12/31/20.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Braun? Okay. Thank you. Is there any old business at this time?
Update on TAB committee?
There's no update since last time I spoke. I mentioned last time that once school gets back up and running, I'll look to connect with Ms. Smith and her colleagues to get that going.
Okay.
Okay. Any new business? Okay. At this time, we'd like to open the meeting to the public. Is there a motion to open the meeting to the public?
Make a motion?
Okay, do you have a second? Motion made by Mrs. Braun, seconded by Mr. Haberther. Meeting is now open to the public.
public comment will now be accepted. The Board of Education sets the limit for the public to speak at the board meeting to 5 minutes per person unless prior permission has been granted by the Board of Education to expend the time pursuant to Board of Education Bylaw 0167. For the record, please indicate your name and address in all comments.
Lynn Smith, 6 Claridge Drive in Middletown, New Jersey. I've been teaching in the district for 17 years, and I'm the president of the KEA. I must respond to some comments that were made at the July 12th board meeting. I am not going to discuss details of our bargaining sessions or cast aspersions, but there are 2 points I am compelled to make. First, the KEA negotiations team has not and would never mislead the members in any of our communications, nor would we fail to keep the members informed of substantial progress. The team takes our communications obligation very seriously. We write the negotiations updates that we then send to all the members as a team. We include the substantial facts and only the facts. We take great care not to compromise the confidentiality of the process. Again, the KEA negotiations team has not and would never mislead the members or fail to inform the members of substantial, measurable progress in our communications. The second topic I want to highlight is the available steps in the collective bargaining process in general, as provided by PERC law. If necessary, the first step is mediation, and the second step is fact-finding. In general, for any district, either party or both parties can file for mediation. To do so, the party or parties must state their belief that the negotiation session has reached an impasse. That means what you would expect that word to mean. That after bargaining in good faith, the filing party believes there has been a significant lack of progress and therefore is requesting the assistance of a state mediator. So this is not a step that any party takes to slow down the process or to avoid negotiating. To the contrary, it is a step that is taken to accelerate the process by asking for help from a state mediator. The KEA filed for mediation in the current session on January 11th. The second step is fact-finding, which is similar to mediation except that this mediator can conduct evidentiary hearings and provide a written report of recommendations for a settlement. For any district, the decision to go to fact-finding can only be made by the state mediator. It cannot be made by either of the parties. The state mediator must make this recommendation and file the paperwork for it. Our state mediator filed for fact-finding for us after only 1 meeting with the parties. That is very unusual, but that is what happened. That is a fact. It is the goal of the KEA negotiations team to settle a fair contract as quickly and efficiently as possible. Protracted negotiations, seeing our members work without a contract, requiring state mediators, and potentially submitting evidentiary documents are all undesirable to the KEA team. However, if necessary, we will participate in these steps as provided by PERC law. Association members, I assure you that your team is dedicated to completing this process as effectively and expeditiously as possible. Board members, I appeal to you to please work with us to resolve our differences and reach a fair agreement. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. Ida Ferrante, consultant with NJEA. I have worked with your district for many years on various issues and negotiations. I have come to know your district quite well. Tonight, I would like to spend a few minutes discussing or perhaps correcting the administration and the board about some of the misnomers being presented to this community. I find it so disheartening that the district is looking to take money out of educators' hands due to the Chapter 44 legislation that went into effect last year. Yes, that is correct. The board wants the educators to take money out of their raises. No other district in Union County is asking their educators to make up this difference. Why is your district doing so? In a budget such as yours, the amount of money we are speaking of is negligible, but significant to the bargaining unit negotiating. For the educators, it might be the difference between paying for a child's braces or making the mortgage payment. I will remind you that this legislation was passed to provide savings both to educators and to boards of education, as well as to right a wrong that was done over a decade ago when, with the stroke of a pen, educators had to pay more for their benefits than was negotiated. I will also remind the community that this district will be receiving $1.3 million in federal relief aid, and the state aid increased by 7.8%. That's about $500,000 over the previous year. This brings the grand total to almost $2 million more in your budget. This is much greater than what the board is looking to make up in their Chapter 44. This is on top of, by the way, 2 additional federal programs that the district had received money from as well. Your district has not seen this much money coming into Kenilworth in many years. Yet the board has proposed a settlement well under the county and state average. We had hoped that after the year we've had, the board members would realize the importance of a fair contract settled before the end of the school year. We hope that they would see the value in our educators and the importance of having a contract to the start of a school year. I urge the board to think about what this is doing to those that come to work every day, even during a pandemic, and now having to face the Delta variant. But they will still come to work and provide your children with a top-notch education. As an educator in Wayne, by the way, also going into the new school year without a contract, I can tell you personally how demoralizing it is to start without a contract. As it is, teachers are stressed out and fearful of all the uncertainty that we will face in September. At the very least, you can do the right thing and offer these fine educators a contract so they can come back feeling appreciated, respected, and valued. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Phil Giordano, Nutley, New Jersey. Hi. I've been a teacher for going on 14 years in this district. As this board knows, we've seen some difficulties in the past, but nothing can compare to the year and a half that we just had. It really doesn't have to be stated that the world of education, or the world at large, faced hardships never seen before. I myself was teaching virtually for part of the year and then returned to teach hybrid. In person. And I can tell you, both experiences were extremely strenuous in their own ways. Both involved hours of extra work preparing and adapting lessons that would be engaging to students who were in different locations and different situations, with the goal of making sure that they would not lose out on an education during these troubled times. It took a lot of time and effort to make sure that students whom I had not even met in person would still get the one-on-one interaction that they needed, and to build a classroom environment when half the students weren't even in the classroom. It was hard, but I did it. We did it. It was only through the perseverance and determination of the staff of this district that we were able to make it through this challenging year. I know that each one of my colleagues put in the effort to make it work, and we did. We even were able to demonstrate student growth this year with improvements in both reading in grades K through 2 and ELA and math in grades 3 through 6. For this effort, teachers were shown appreciation. I personally received dozens of thank yous from parents and students for the effort put into making this year work. My principal, Mr. Davies, made sure to always show his appreciation of our work any opportunity he had through kind words and emails. Our superintendent, Mr. Arlington, showed his gratitude with every opportunity, particularly in his closing message to the staff. Quote, "Know that I understand how hard you worked, know that I appreciate that work, and I appreciate you." During Teacher Appreciation Week, we received kind words from the mayor and Dr. Panici, such as, "We appreciate you. You make the difference every day for our students." We even received praise from the members of this board. "You are essentially the best. We thank you for going the distance. Your dedication and selfless work do not go unnoticed." The kind words from everyone were welcomed. However, when the time came to show this staff how much they were actually appreciated, there appears to be a disconnect. The contract offer from the board was well below the county average. After the effort we showed since last March, after we successfully able to keep educating our students and were praised for it, this offer is nothing short of shocking and upsetting. I want to end with one more quote from President Joe Biden, who was recently speaking at the NEA's annual meeting in Washington. "You deserve a raise, not praise." Thank you.
Hi. Oh, I don't know if this thing working. Leslie Bedford, Branchburg, New Jersey. I'm kind of like the old one around here now, which is like kind of scary when you've been teaching 20 years. And over the course of all of those years, I have given plenty of speeches, whether they be in front of the board, whether they be in front of a classroom, whether they be in front of a graduation ceremony or whatever. I can talk a lot, and it's hard to make me not talk. I can talk a lot about how safe I felt in this building. Well, my building, sorry, I'm sure here too. All year last year, because I was an in-person teacher. There might have been a little post that might have gone up when I complained about a restaurant near me that I was very uncomfortable in, and I said I felt much safer, beyond safer, coming in school every single day with my 15 students. I can talk a lot about the change in leadership that we've had in this district over the years that I've been here. I find a very big difference between administrators and leadership. And we finally have leadership here that is guiding us and putting us in the right direction. I can talk a lot about my students, because I wear my bracelet still that I still got at the end of the year. I can talk a lot about it. And as you all know, it takes a lot for me to be speechless. I was speechless when I received the offer from the board. It takes a lot for me to be speechless. So I don't have a big fancy speech tonight. I don't have a lot to say, but to let you know that if you wanted me to be speechless, you got me to be speechless with that offer. I'm really, really hoping that I can go back to the table and I can get my speech back again, because I got a lot of talking to do with my first graders in September, and that's going to happen no matter what. So thank you very much. Just wanted to let you know. See ya.
Thank you.
Hello. My name's Jill Rappa. I live on 23 Dorset Drive in Kenilworth. I've been here for 30-something years. So I'm kind of speechless. I don't even know where to start. So I am going to stay focused and tell you why I'm here, what I'm looking for. But there are some things that came up with the meeting, with your presentation, I did want to question after. So, all right, so I'm a wife, a mother, educator in Elizabeth Public Schools. And based on Governor Murphy's mandate, I am here advocating for mask choice. I'm requesting that the Kenilworth Board of Education submit Open Public Record Act forms to the New Jersey Department of Health and Governor Murphy for all peer-reviewed safety studies, scientific evidence, and data that they have relied on to make their decisions and policies for implementing and requiring the unapproved experimental agency, emergency use authorized device of a mask to be worn by all people in public school buildings. The following bullets that I have on this paper I sent to Superintendent Arlington. I'm requesting that data that provides proof in which mask wearing benefits the children in our school district physically and medically. Proof that masks cause no harm to students emotionally, mentally, and physically. Proof of statewide tally records provided by public school nurses logging and identifying the number of incidences of mask-related adverse effects during the in-person school year. The following that I have on here is a partial list of adverse incidences for the child population related to mask wearing. They can occur dizziness, headaches, migraines, lethargy, bloody noses, skin lesions, rashes, acne on the face, skin breakdown behind the ears, poor dental hygiene, increased cavities, mouth sores, and abscesses. Reduced ability to concentrate, cognitive decline, exacerbated the mental health issues, including anxiety and depression, difficulty breathing, difficulty learning. School studies that show the communication between students, teachers, and peers have not been adversely affected by masks. Proof that the children with 504s and IEPs have not declined in learning comparing the 2019-2020 and the 2020-21 school year. More Oprah requests of copies of the emergency use authorization informed consent documents that were provided to the New Jersey Public Schools and the New Jersey Department of Health, informing taxpayer parents whose children attend New Jersey Public Schools that they acknowledge and give parental consent allowing their child to wear masks all day in the public school environment. Governor Murphy has claimed that the reinstated mask mandate is implemented because of the current surge in Delta variant test results. I'm requesting that this Board of Education submit additional Oprah forms to the New Jersey State Health Department requesting the scientific evidence, the documentation that they're relying on to decipher between COVID-19 Alpha and the Delta B16172 variant. According to New Jersey COVID-19 Information Hub, which I have the link, of the current total positive PCR cases, the Delta variant accounts for 90%, and the Alpha variant is at a 2%. The total positive PCR cases, so clearly PCR testing has been proven to have false positive results. It's important to accurately identify the validity of the test results data that is driving this current mask mandate. The following bullets identify the information that's being requested. Identify specific scientific testing that's being used to decipher and establish the difference between COVID-19 and Delta variant during this current surge. Identify percentages of hospitalizations that are being attributed to the Delta variant positive cases. As of March 7, 2021, the New Jersey data tracking COVID-19 hospitalizations has been dismantled. Therefore, accurate data is essential in determining if we are truly in a current pandemic crisis. NewJersey.com coronavirus tracker data does not validate or warrant the need to mask our children in school. It's obvious that there is no current surge or excess deaths in New Jersey, which I printed out some data for you today. In conclusion, until those results are provided and reviewed by the parents, guardians of each child, there is no right for the board to enforce these harmful mask policies in our school. We do not consent to the mask mandate, and the Board of Ed does have the power and obligation to make the change in our school policy to protect the children from harm. Challenge the data. The Board of Ed can authorize a mask optional policy, citing that parents are medical advocates for their own children and will decide what is the best interest for their child's health. The mask optional return to school plan has been presented previously and should be honored and implemented with steps to challenge the governor's current mask mandate in light of insufficient surge data. Protecting our children from harm is first and foremost. Masking our children needlessly for 8 hours during the school day is criminal, considering they have a 99.97 survival rate. New Jersey has a fully vaccinated rate of 59% and a less than 5% transmission rate. The data does not support masking our children. I'm requesting that our board defends our children, protects them from unnecessary harm, and challenges the governor's mask mandate for the upcoming school year with hopes of returning mask optional for the students and staff. In Public Record Act request form needs to be accessible on the Kenilworth Public School District website. I was looking for it and it wasn't there. It's not available. So a little bit of facts about masks. Masks are, okay, wearing a face mask is exceedingly hazardous, far greater than the threat of coronavirus. Oral bacteria buildup within a mask results in toxicity affecting the gums, throat, and lungs. Covering the nose and mouth forces CO2 recirculation, limiting the CO2 intake. Hypoxia, which is O2 deprivation. Hypercapnia, CO2 rebreathing, impairs bodily and mental functions and can cause discomfort, drowsiness, work rate reduction, dizziness, headache, fatigue, disorientation, speech impairments, exhaustion, muscle weakness, twitching, hyperventilating, depression, panic attacks, irregular heartbeats.
Jess, I'm sorry, there's a 5-minute limit.
I know.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Just wrap it up. I'm
All
sorry.
right, well, I have these,
Thank you.
my data for you.
Yes, you should.
But I'll be following back up with you all to,
Thank you, sorry.
that's okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Renee Rafter, 219 North 17th Street. So in relation to this executive order of mask mandates, the governor has given the local education agencies the ability to determine the consequences for non-compliant students and parents. In the beginning, you were listing a bunch of fines and sentences that could occur for non-compliance. If the governor is giving each local educational agency the power to determine the consequences, are these consequences that Kenilworth has decided on? Or what are the consequences for the non-complying parents and students? It's a question I look forward to some answers to. Then, according to our reentry PowerPoint, I looked at that before we came into our meeting, the meeting today, and there is protocol for quarantining of vaccinated students. And if I'm understanding it correctly, the vaccinated students do not need to quarantine. The CDC has told us that both vaccinated and unvaccinated students transmit the disease. have the ability to transmit this virus. So my question is, why are we segregating a vaccinated from an unvaccinated? And doesn't this segregation then indirectly indicate a child's health history, which would impede our HIPAA rights? So in the PowerPoint, it said that there's no remote instruction unless it's deemed that an entire class needs to quarantine. Then we will provide remote instruction. My question is, how are we determining an entire class needing to quarantine? If there's one vaccinated student in that class, am I to understand then the other 17 that are unvaccinated have to quarantine and the one doesn't? And therefore there is not going to be home instruction or virtual instruction for these unvaccinated students. You did say that students that are unvaccinated that need to quarantine, which can be anywhere from 17 to 14 days, a long period of time to miss school. I could say that being a teacher. I have a student out for one day, there is a lot of work that is missed, and a lot of work on my side to help catch that student up for one day of missing instruction. You said that they will have time to make up this work and that there will be support. My question is, what does that support look like? And how are you going to guarantee that it is the same equitable instruction that our vaccinated students are getting? Those are the questions I look forward to hearing more about. And further, you do a good job communicating with us. I'd like to hear more in our communication, answering those questions in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Motion made by Mr. Ladati, seconded by Mr. Haberthor to close the meeting to the public. The meeting is now closed to the public. We thank you for your comments. Okay. Mr. Ganella, we prepared to vote on resolutions?
Yes, there are 37 resolutions on the agenda this evening. Do any need to be voted on separately?
If I'm correct, the information that was sent home regarding Resolution 24 was that we're simply voting on any changes made, and anything I've already voted no on that's in that resolution remains no for me.
Mr. Arlington noted that prior.
I thought so. I'm just making sure I read it correctly, because I'm still no on that aspect.
Yes.
That residency issue is not in here, is it?
No, we
Okay.
have to talk about
And
that.
so, hearing none, this is for resolutions 1 through 37 on the agenda. Biner?
Yes.
Braun?
Yes.
Haberthor? Yes. Jankowicz? Yes. Ladati? Yes. Zimmerman? Panici?
Yes.
Motion's carry unanimously.
Mr. Ganella, we're going to go into closed
Yes,
executive session, right?
Motion was made by Mrs. Zimmerman. Is there a second? Mr. Haberthor? Okay, the Board of Education. Be resolved by the Board of Education. The Board of Education meet in private session from which the public shall be excluded to discuss the following topics: personnel, a review of a Board of Education level grievance, KEA negotiations, and a residency matter. Private discussion is being held pursuant to Section 7B and 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act. The matters under discussion will be disclosed to the public as soon as final decisions are made and voted upon. This concludes the public portion of the meeting. The board will be returning after to make a, to possibly vote on a residency matter, but that will not be made public at this time.